Hello, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm gonna be telling you guys my favorite books, my 5-star reads, books that I would sell my soul to read again, essentially. And they are books that if you haven't yet read, you should read, because they're just so good. These books are all books that I was just so hooked on. Like when I was reading them, I was in this world. There was no distractions. Like it was just me and the book. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just like, I don't know, it's just this feeling that you get when reading it. These are all of my 5-star reads. I actually think I have over 20, which is a lot more than I thought. So either I'm not a very harsh 5-star rater. No, I think I am. I do judge them harshly, but I just think that I'm quite good at selecting books that I think I will really enjoy. And the reason I'm good at doing that is because I have a Kindle. So on Kindle, you can actually get a sample of a book. It'll give you like the first 2 or 3 chapters of a book. And a lot of the times before I buy a book, I will read the sample on the Kindle and just see if I like the writing style. And then usually if I can tell that I like the writing style, then I will buy the book. So I don't like to waste my money on books that I'm not super sure about. So I think that's why I tend to read books that I really, really love most of the time. Without further ado, let's begin. So I'll start off. Ooh, where should I start? I don't know. I think I'll start off with my most recent 5-star read. This wasn't even 5-star, this was like a 6-star read for me. And that was Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. This is the 3rd book of the Infernal Devices series. I've also rated the first one, Clockwork Angel, 5-star, but I don't have the physical copy of it because I've lent it to my sister. But the first book and the 3rd book of this series, specifically this book, Clockwork Princess, I can't, like this is one of my favorite books of all time. The whole Infernal Devices series is just 5-star, 6 stars actually. You have to read it if you haven't. I'm not going to delve into like the synopsis of the book too much here. Just read them. Just trust me. This book, the writing, the characters, the love story, the world, the found family, like this is where it's at. My next 5-star book, it's another series. It's the 1st and 3rd book of the series. And it is Magnolia Parks and then Magnolia Parks The Long Way Home. I cannot with the series. I think I read this one a year ago and then I read this one like 9 months ago, 10. No, I can't remember. I think it was about a year ago, but oh my God, I'm obsessed with it. I'm almost embarrassed that this is like a 5-star read for me. No, I'm not embarrassed, but this whole series is kind of toxic. It's very much Gossip Girl set in London. You're reading about like the elites of the London society, and it's just a bunch of like mid-20-year-old entitled people that have very toxic relationships with each other. But you just love the characters. Like they're kind of unlikable in some ways, but you can't help but just fall in love with them and the world. And everything about the series is just phenomenal for me. Like I have not stopped thinking about it. I love Magnolia and BJ. There's also the Daisy Hates and Christian Hems series within the same universe. So it's all under the Magnolia Parks universe, but for me, it's Magnolia Parks and BJ. Like they are my favorite couple to read about. I just love being in their heads. There's just something about the way Jessa Hastings writes her characters and just writes, like I can't. It just scratches something in my brain. It is so good. If you haven't yet read the series, please do. Just bear in mind that this series is kind of like olives or pickles. Like I think you either love it or you hate it. I'm yet to meet someone who's sort of like kind of in between about it. I just think you fall on one side of the spectrum. And luckily for me, I love it. I love it so much. Okay, moving on. My next 5-star reads are 3 books from the same author, and one of them I don't actually have. I read it on my Kindle. I should probably get the physical copy. Yeah, anyway. So we've got The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then we also have Carrie Soto is Back, and then the 3rd book that I rated 5 stars from this author is Daisy Jones and the Six. Like, these books very much deserve the hype. I think my favorite one of all time from these 3 books, so this one, and Daisy Jones and the Six, is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is like a 6-star for me. Like this one is beyond a 6-star. This one and Daisy and Jones and the 6 was 5-star, but this one's like a 6-star for me. I just love the way she writes her characters. For me, this was 5 stars purely because of just how incredible I thought the writing was and just how much you really care for the characters. Like, I can't even explain it. I really want to read all of them again. They're just so good. Please read them if you haven't yet, because they are just such phenomenal books. My next 5-star is 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I actually have a reading vlog of me reading this, and I absolutely ate this book up. Like, I loved it. And that's purely because I love like a heist movie or a heist book. I love reading about people like pulling off an insane crime or like this insane agenda that they have to pull off. I'm always like, how are you gonna do it? Like, give me the steps. Like, what are we gonna do to pull this off? If you haven't yet seen Now You See Me and Now You See Me Too, they're like one of my favorite movies of all time. And it's also like a heist movie about like with magicians, but I just love watching those movies. And this book kind of gave me like similar vibes to them. So because of that, I loved it. But also the other reason that I gave it a 5 stars is just because of the characters. Like, I love these characters and I really cared for them and I was so invested in them and their emotions and like the dynamics between them and like sort of the found family in this book. I'm yet to read the second book, Crooked Kingdom. I'm gonna read that sometime soon and I'm sure I'm gonna give that one a 5 star as well. But it's just so good. Also, I love the cover. I don't know, I really love this universe. And I haven't even read Shadow and Bone. People said if you've read Shadow and Bone, you would actually love this book even more. I kind of went into it completely blind, and I'm not gonna lie, the first like 80 pages, 100 pages, I was like, what is going on? But then it all kind of just comes together and makes sense, and it's just so good. So the next book that I gave a 5 star is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. This is the second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and I love that entire trilogy. Like, I just think it was one of the most beautiful, magical fairy tale books I've ever read. Like, the writing is just phenomenal. Like, her descriptions, it's so lyrical. You just feel like you've stepped into like a Disney movie. Like, I don't know, I thought it was so gorgeous, and no one can write these beautiful descriptions like Stephanie Garber. Like, she is the queen of just writing these gorgeous, gorgeous words and just these gorgeous sentences, and I'm like, oh. The reason I rated this one a 5 stars just because I love the dynamic between Evangeline and Jax in this book. I love the world, I love what's happening in this book, and I don't know, reading this book felt very nostalgic to me. I grew up on Disney, like I love Disney movies, and this entire series to me just felt like, I don't know, it felt like my childhood. It was almost like a more grown-up version of Disney, and it was just so comforting to me. I absolutely love it. If you are yet to read this series, please do. Just read all these books, I beg of you. My next 5-star book that I don't recommend to anyone to read, just because I don't want anyone to be traumatized or go through what I went through reading this book. And I'm sure you're probably gonna know what it is. I think everyone that reads this book gives it a 5 star, but we're all like, please don't read it. Don't do it, don't do this to yourself. And that is none other than A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. I've never cared, like honestly, when I tell you that I've never cared for a character more than Jude, I mean it, and I don't think I ever will. This character got inside of my heart and made a little home, and he lives there. But I just don't want to recommend this book to anyone, and if you're going to read it, please check the trigger warnings. That's no joke. This book is extremely heavy, like extremely, extremely heavy. I actually had no idea what I was getting myself into when I read this book, and I was reading it and I was like, oh God, I don't know if I can read this. Like, it's very heavy, but the writing is phenomenal, and I don't think anyone can make you care about a character the way that she can. I don't know what she did. It's so good, and like, oh, I want to reread it, which is so messed up because this book was but honestly, I just think the writing was phenomenal. The way I cared for the characters, the story in it, it was so beautiful, but also just so devastating at the same time. Like, the beautiful part came from like the friendship and how they kind of cared about each other, but the book is absolutely devastating. Yet I gave it a 5-star. Like, this book is just unlike anything I've ever read before, and I don't want to read anything like it ever again. If I'm honest, like, this is enough for me, but phenomenal book. Next up is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a 5-star book from many other people. Like, this book, it took me quite a long time to read it. I think, hold on. I think this was like on the bookshelves for like 2 years. Like, I kept seeing this book for, I think 1 or 2 years before I finally picked it up. I was like, oh, I'll just see what the hype is all about. Like, it's always in my face. As soon as I walk into the bookshop, I should probably see why it's so popular. And I'm so glad that I did. This was one of the most unique, beautiful stories I've ever read. The last 50 pages of this book was just unforgettable. Like, this is quite a strange reference, but this book reminds me of the last 3 minutes of All Too Well 10-minute version by Taylor Swift. Let me just listen to it. Okay, enough of that. Is that just me? Like, if you've read the book before and you've also listened to All Too Well 10 minutes, not the last 3 minutes, sorry, the last 2 minutes, I don't know what it is, but the melody of that and just like sort of what she's saying reminds me so much of this book. I don't know if that's just in my brain, but like, sorry if that makes no sense, but like, to me, those two things are just like, I don't know, they go hand in hand. This book is so incredibly beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful books I've read. The ending of it, like, I will never forget. I can't. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but you guys, just please read this book if you haven't already. This book is phenomenal. Phenomenal. One of my favorite books. I actually think this may be a 6-star book for me, purely just because when I read it, like when I finished it, I was like I was just sat staring at the wall like this, like so good. So good. My next 5-star book is the book that actually got me into like psychological thrillers. And it's weird that this is a 5-star book for me because I don't typically like this woman's writing. But it is Verity by Colleen Hoover. Now, I don't like her other books. They're just not really my cup of tea. I don't really enjoy the writing. But she needs to start writing more psychological thrillers because this book was so good. And I don't know if it was incredible because it was my first psychological thriller, because since then I've read about like 15 psychological thrillers and I really enjoy them. But this one is my favorite, I think, just because once you start reading this genre, you can kind of guess what's going to happen more. Like, I think a lot of them follow a similar formula, or you kind of know what to expect sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like, once you've read enough psychological thrillers, it takes a lot more to kind of surprise you or shock you. But because this was my first one, the reading experience I had with this was insane. I finished this book in 1 day. Like, I picked it up and I was like, I'll just see how this goes. And then I finished it in that 1 day and I was like, and it got me obsessed with reading psychological thrillers. So it was like all I wanted to read. And because of that, I just have to give it 5 stars because the reading experience was insane. And I'll never forget it. And because of it, I love psychological thrillers, which is like one of my favorite genres now. So thank you, Verity, and thank you, Colleen Hoover. The next 5-star book for me is a part of a series, and that is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series. The whole entire Throne of Glass series is a 5-star series for me. Like, it is one of the best series I've ever read. I will never forget it. It was just such an incredible time reading it. This book specifically was just phenomenal. Like, I just think this is the best book in the series. If you've read the Throne of Glass series, let me know which one's your favorite. I feel like everyone has a different opinion, but for me personally, it is without a doubt Queen of Shadows. I also love Crown of Midnight. Okay, moving on, we do have another fantasy romance series. I'm so sorry, it's just what I love to read. And this is the series that got me back into reading, made me fall in love with reading again, and I'm sure it's the same for many other people, but it is A Court of Thorns and Rose and A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Specifically these 2 books. Like, I love the entire series, but these 2 books in particular, this book, chapter 54, I think I've read chapter 54 like 10 times. Like, I I thought it was one of the most beautiful things I've ever read, and I just feel like the foreshadowing that happened in this book that led to like what happened in this book was just executed perfectly. I've been desperate and itching to read another book that had this kind of foreshadowing because I don't know, it was just such a good reading experience. And again, I might only feel that strongly about it because it is the book, like it's the series that got me back into reading. I think everyone feels that way about whatever book or series got them back like in love with reading. And for me, it was this. I love this book. Like when she goes under the mountain, like the second half of this book was one of my favorite things I ever read. A lot of people say that this one isn't that great. I don't know what they're talking about. This book is so good. But this book is just chef's kiss. My next 5-star reads are Normal People and Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. I think with Sally Rooney, you either really love her writing or you're sort of like indifferent to it. Some people read Sally Rooney and they just don't get it. They're like, this is so boring. There's not a lot of plot. And that is because this is very character driven. This is not a plot. Neither of these are plot driven at all. So if you're reading a book wanting something fun and like a good plot and I don't know, a bit of action, you are not going to get it with these two books. But if you are someone that loves character study and character development and just more like, not even development, it's just more like you're really watching a character and sort of being in their brain and understanding why they are the way they are. If you love books like that, you will love Sally Rooney. I just think, I don't know, I really loved her books and her writing just really speaks to me. Like, I don't know if you can see, I've tabbed it. Like, I just love these two books so much. I did read her other book, Beautiful World, Where Are You? And that one, not a fan of. I think I gave it a 3-star. So I was kind of sad about that. But she has another book coming out, I think this year. So I'm super excited about this one. But yeah, these two books in particular by Sally Rooney are just, I love them. I love them so much. And I love this TV series. The Conversations with Friends TV series, flop. Normal People TV series, fantastic. Both books, fantastic. Okay, so my next 5-star read is My Policeman by Bethan Roberts. This book has actually been turned into a movie and it has Harry Styles in it, so that's a plus. I don't know if you can see, I've also tabbed this book. I adored this book. Like, I absolutely love it. I think I read it in 2 days. I don't know what it was. Something about the writing and the way that she was talking about like her first love, like her first infatuation was just so, I don't know. It was just so well written and I just thought it perfectly encapsulated how that sort of emotion feels like when you're first in love, sort of like when you're like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16, like your first ever young love. It was just captured so perfectly in this book. I actually read this book because I watched Jack Edwards' video where he reads Harry Styles' books that he's been seen out and about with. And this was before we knew that Harry Styles was going to be in the movie. So I ended up reading it because of that and I loved it. I loved it so much. So please read it if you haven't yet. It's so good. My next 5-star book, I've got 2 copies of it because I love it that much. And it is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Now, I have not read a lot of classics in my life, but this book, I read it in my last year of high school, so about like 10 years ago. And because we really studied it and really went into the book and like delved into what the author was trying to say and the meaning behind what he was writing, etc., it made me fall in love with this book. I feel like it's a very good lesson because in this world of book talk, book culture, where it's like normal to read 300 books a year, you don't really engage with the book that much. Like if you're reading a book just in one day, which I've been guilty of, because you know, it's just so fun to read, it's so good. It's not going to stick with you the same way that a book does if you've really studied it and you've read it. Like I think I read this book multiple times, or like at least parts of it, because I had to do like essays on it. So I really studied this book. And because of that, like this book has stuck with me for 10 years. I absolutely love it. And it was also my teacher's favorite book. So when she was sort of teaching us about it, I fell in love with it through her passion. I was like, oh my God, this book is so good. So she really sold me on it. But also I fell in love with it. It is just a fantastic book. This was the copy that I read in school. So I don't know if you can tell, it's very old. And then because I love it so much, I did end up getting myself a beautiful kind of new pristine copy, and I just love it. I also love the movie. I just really love the story, and I love the themes behind it, and I adore it. 2 more books and then I will shut up and leave you be. My other 5-star book, which is kind of rogue, I did not expect to love this book the way that I did, but that is The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. This book has been around for like 20 years, 15 years, a very long time, and it's been popular for that entire time. So this book has definitely stood the test of time. It is such a good book. It's like a mystery slash thriller, but more so mystery. And I love it. Like, it was one of my favorite reading experiences of all time. I absolutely adored it. This book is really fun to read if you're quite interested in like secret societies and if you love art. Like, this book is essentially uncovering these mysteries within like Leonardo da Vinci's art. So you learn a lot about Leonardo da Vinci and like art history and things like that, all while like uncovering a really fun mystery. Super fast paced, super action heavy, and it's so good. And then the last book that I rated a 5-star is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I really got into my dark academia era and I fell in love with it. Like, I was obsessed with it. Was it 2 years ago? Was it a year ago? I think I read this book 2 years ago, or like a year and a half ago. I can't remember, but I loved it. The characters, the story, just the writing, like some of the passages in here were so incredible. I don't know if you can tell, but I really like underlined. I should really go back in and like actually tab it, but throughout the whole book I was just like underlining it and highlighting it. I thought the writing was so good. I thought the story was so interesting. The concept of it was amazing. Just loved this book. I loved the vibe, and I watched so many TikToks of it once I finished reading it, and so many YouTube videos, and I think because of that, like, I was so obsessed with it. It was just an obvious 5-star book for me. I absolutely loved it, and if you haven't yet read it, you should definitely get into your dark academia era. It's so much fun and I just love it. I think this is the blueprint of dark academia, so you have to give props where props are due. And yes, that is it. I'll show you guys. There we go. So these are all of my 5-star reads. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what your favorite books are. Like, what are your 5-star reads? I love to know what other people rated 5 stars and if we have similar taste or not, or I don't know, just let me know what it is. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.